In this video, I'm going to break down the story behind the album covers that the British band The Smiths have used across their discography, from their first release to their latest. As well as full studio albums, we will look at their compilation covers as well. Over their 5 years, the band created music that came along with a very strong and consistent visual style. This style also stood out from their contemporaries. In an era where style and identity meant everything, the band chose to step back and have other people be the stars of their album covers. From film stars to playwrights, these are the people immortalised on these album covers. The consistent visual style doesn't just come from the subject of the albums, it also comes from the look of them and their duotone colours. The album art was a joint project between frontman Morrissey and the rough trade art coordinator Joe Slay, as well as graphic designer Karen Goff. Together, they went on to create some of the most iconic album covers of all time. The first of the band's studio albums, after being signed to Rough Trade, was self-titled and released in 1984. Its cover depicts Joe D'Alessandro from Andy Warhol's 1968 film Flesh. The band's second studio album release came in 1985, called Meet His Murder. The album cover shows 4 images of a soldier with Meet His Murder written across his helmet. The image, however, is edited. The original is of American soldier Marine Corporal Michael Wynn from the Vietnam War. The original text inscribed on his helmet reads, "Make war, not love." On future re-releases of the album, the cover has just 1 image rather than 4. The band's next album would be 1986's The Queen is Dead. This album depicts French-Swiss actor Alain Delon. The image comes from the 1964 French film The Unvanquished. In fact, the lead actor wrote to Morrissey, giving his permission for them to use the still on the album cover. However, not every person asked to be on the cover of one of their albums would accept, but more on that later. In 1987, the band would release their last studio album, titled Strangeways, Here We Come. The album features 1950s and 60s star Richard Deveros. The image from the album comes from an on-set photo of both Richard and his co-star, James Dean, from the 1955 film East of Eden. Richard Deveros wouldn't just appear on this album though, he would go on to feature on the alternate cover of Best. The photo in question also comes from the same film, East of Eden. The next album that we will go over is the band's 1988 live album, Rank, and was actually released after the band split the previous year. The cover features British actress Alexandra Bastardo. The image itself comes from the photographer John D. Green's book, Birds of Britain, published in 1967. Now onto the band's many compilation albums. In November 1984, the compilation album Hatful of Hollow was released by the band. The cover featured a picture of Fabrice Colette, whose photo was in French culture magazine Liberation and used on the cover. The World Won't Listen was the band's second compilation album, released in 1987. The album's cover image is actually cropped from a much larger image used for the cassette of the album. The full image comes from a 1960s fairground photo, found in a book called Rock and Roll Times, The Style and Spirit of the Early Beatles and Their First Fans, by German photographer and friend of the Beatles, Jürgen Vollmer. The next compilation album is Louder Than Bombs, which came out in 1987. The cover art of the record features Salford-born playwright Sheila Delaney. She was a well-known writer, a part of the literary movement of British kitchen sink realism of the 1950s and 60s, and is most known for writing the play A Taste of Honey in 1958.
Feeling pretty excited about tonight. Have you got the butterflies?
No, I've just got a very bad cold at the moment, and that's all that's worrying me.
How do you anticipate the critics will receive your play?
Well, I'd be very interested to read what the critics say, but I really feel that the best form of criticism, the form that I find most rewarding anyway, is that when, somebody off the street, like when the play was at Stratford, in all those sort of cafes, the locals came in, the bricklayers and the cleaners and everything, when they said it was good and they enjoyed it, I knew they meant it.
The photo is part of a much larger photo shoot featuring many pictures of her in her home place of Salford. The photo of her on some steps, however, was the one chosen to be the cover of the album. Now with their back catalogue under a new owner, WEA, today known as Warner Music Group, the company decided to release 2 more compilation albums, Best 1 in the August of 1992 and Best 2 in November of the same year. Both had alternate covers for America featuring American actor Richard Deveros, as we talked about when discussing the Strangeways Here We Come album. The main artwork for the albums, however, comes together to create a much larger image of a biker couple in what looks like a diner. The photograph was taken by American actor, filmmaker and photographer Dennis Hopper in 1961. Warner Music Group continued with another compilation album 3 years later in 1995, this one just called Singles, comprising of, well, the band's previously released singles. The cover art is a photo of English actress Diana Dawes from the 1956 film Yield to the Night, also known as Blonde Sinner in US markets. The very best of the Smiths came out in 2001, ironically without any input from the band. This is best shown with the cover, which no Smiths member had any input in its creation, Mojo magazine even going as far to say it's an hard man's approximation of a Smiths cover. The cover itself features Charles Hawtrey, who seems to have been the pick for no other reason than the fact that he was one of Morrissey's favourite actors. Now with the band's input, the next record was The Sound of the Smiths, made in 2008. The cover is the first to feature the band members themselves, if you don't count a singles alternative cover art, which we will discuss in another video. Also in 2008, a limited edition box set was created. The guy next to the car on the cover is American actor Joel Fabiani. The image is taken from the Department S TV show. The band's final compilation came out in September of 2011, titled Complete, and just like The World Won't Listen cover, featured a 1950s fairground. In fact, the image comes from the same source as that 1960s fairground photo book called Rock and Roll Times, The Style and Spirit of the Early Beatles and Their First Fans by German photographer and friend of the Beatles Jürgen Vollmer. It is said that Morrissey chose this image because each of the girls resembled each member of the band. Next video we will go over some of the Smiths cover stars from their singles, but until then, thanks for watching.